Hey there, welcome. My name is Shireen, and welcome back. This is the video series focusing on introducing beginner level users to Photoshop. So we started really at the beginning with the first video, just introducing the workspace, just getting to know the names of all the tools, and starting to sort of figure out sort of where things are. But let's start a mock project and kind of see these tools in action. So the first set of tools I'm going to focus on in this video are the selection tools. So let's get started. I'm going to begin by opening up a new file, File New. And for my purposes, I'm going to just sort of imagine that it's, a board, and I'm going to start copying and pasting some different elements of my artwork using the selection tools. I'm going to create a collage. So if I go under print size, these are sizes that are familiar to me. So I'm going to say letter, tabloid, legal, A4. So we are sort of familiar with those sizes. That should be good for our purposes. What resolution should I choose? So the default resolution, that means the number of pixels per every inch of the document, is set to 300. And that's a nice high res image. So the number of DPI, the number of PPI, dots per inch or pixels per inch, the more pixels or dots per inch you have, the higher quality, the higher the clarity and the detail of the images. When we're talking about for web or for screen or for looking at things on your phone, so those kind of images are low resolution images. Those are usually about 72 DPI. And so somewhere around 150 to 200 is in between, a nice medium size. So just remember when you're choosing 300 DPI means you're going to have a nice high resolution. When you go to print out, if you need to print this out, you're going to get a nice fair amount of good quality. And the higher the file size is going to be though too, right? So we have a few different things to consider. So for right now, we're not going to print this, but I would like to work high res. So I'm going to go ahead and stay at 300 DPI. That's the default. And I'm going to get started. So let me go ahead and find another image here. I think this one was M Street in Washington, so shout out to M Street. My first selection tool that I'm going to choose is my marquee tool, and if we, again, as a review, click and hold, underneath the rectangular marquee is the elliptical and then the single rows. And this is just basically we're going to be able to isolate certain parts of the image using different shapes. So these are geometric shapes. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to go ahead and just choose, like, say, the middle of that image there. I can go ahead and say edit, copy, and then when I come over to my untitled document, I can do edit, paste. And now I use my move tool, which is sort of still kind of in that selection phase. I can kind of use my move tool and place that anywhere that I want in my document. A couple things to note. You've now created a layer by virtue of the fact that you did edit and paste. When you paste in, you're pasting into layers. At any point, you can take off the visibility. All right, so you can deactivate the visibility and you can reactivate so that it's visible, not visible, as you choose. You can also play with the opacity. And then there's also blending modes and lots of other ways that we can play with that layers panel. So just a very beginning introduction to layers panel. Let's go back to our selection tools. So if I wanted to make that a rectangular marquee, I would have done that. If I wanted to do a elliptical, a circular marquee, I can kind of do something there, create a big circle. I'm holding down my shift key so I can create a perfect circle. I can move it to make sure that I grab the section that I would like. And again, if I do an edit, copy, edit, paste, I can take off the visibility from the first layer, and now we have this nice circular selection. So that's sort of the very fundamentals of sort of how to copy and paste. Now, I'm going to choose Command D or Control D to deselect. That means stop that selection from happening. And I want to go a little bit deeper now because we're really going to need to know a little bit more about our options when we're working with selection tools. So under the marquee tool, you'll notice up at the top here, and again, if this options panel or control panel isn't visible to you, you can go under Window, Options. Okay, so maybe you have it not showing like that, so you can go up and have it showing. So what you can notice though is that again, this series of options changes according to the tool that you have chosen. So one of the things it's asking us is, do you want to start with a new selection? Do you want to add to an already established selection? So here's a square. If I add to that, I can also select another square marquee section of this artwork. If I choose the next icon, it's going to say subtract from selection. So these are two elements of the artwork that are selected. Again, if I do Command C, Command V, that looks like that, right? So if I do that, I can also come here now and say, take away the selection, and I can take away one element, and now I've just got this little bit, this Nike store selected, right? So this final one is asking if we want to intersect with the selection, and so I dragged my selection box over, and only the area that intersected with what was already selected becomes selected. So this one I have to be very honest, I don't use as much, but every now and again, when you need it, you really need it, and it's a very helpful tool, but I use it much more rarely. These three are heavily in play for me, right? Starting off with a new selection and then modifying it by adding or taking away. Next, we need to figure out what feathering means. So feathering, I'll go back again to my circle. Feathering, we saw already that when I did my first selection. Now let's start looking at the edges, right? So that edge looks fairly crisp and clear as an edge. Let's go back now under circular elliptical marquee. I'm going to choose 5 as a pixel feather, and then anti-alias, I'm going to have that checked. Anti-alias creates that blur, that transition, that soft edge. Think again photographs, right? So we don't really want that pixely, harsh, hard-edged selection. We want something where it's going to transition from the selection into what's surrounding it. So anti-alias is a term, think of it that it means sort of to blur or to transition. And then feathering means, again, too, feathering to transparency. So, I mean, here's how it looks. All right, so that's feather at 5. If I do Command C, I'm going to use my Move tool to scooch this one over and do Command V to paste. I want you to see them side by side now. All right, so this one had no feather. This one has a 5-point feather. So meaning from this edge of color, and there's sort of 5 stages till it feathers off to transparency, and it creates that really soft, blurry edge like that. Okay, so I want you to see them side by side. So that is what feathering does. All right, so you're going to see those options when you work with any of your selection tools, because the selection edges, that's, you know, how it integrates with what's around it is what is very important. Last but not least, we're going to take a look at select and mask when we go to our next tool. Join me over here at our lasso tool. Let me find something for us to play around with here. So we've got this flower, and I'm ready to go with my lasso tool. We know now that this means new, add, and subtract. We know that feathering kind of helps us feather and transition to transparency. Anti-alias creates blurred edge, and select and mask. A lasso tool allows us, with my hand, based on a shape now, not based on a freeform shape, not on geometric shape, square or circle. It allows me, I'm doing this kind of freehand. All right, so it allows me to, I'm going to just pick these 2 leaves. So these 2 petals, it allows me to create a freeform shape manually. And what I wanted to show you was under select and mask now, again, we have to think, what do those edges look like? Are they soft? Are they feathering? We didn't have feathering selected. Let's take a look. Aha. Select and refine allows us to look at our selection, again, in its environment, right? So in context. So we can look at it onion skin, meaning against a transparent background, or with these marching ants, they're called, when you see that active selection line. We can look at it against black or against white. I think against white because we know that that other board that I'm transferring it to is white. So I think that's going to help me. So I'm going to keep it on white. But what you'll notice is I have the white turned down a little bit, and it helps me to kind of see what else is around it. And what's great is that you can choose 100% or opacity, etc. I'm going to go ahead under smooth, and I'm going to add a little bit more smoothness, and I'm going to add a little bit more feathering here at this point, and you can see before your very eyes what's happening. But in the case of feathering, it's feathering out, transitioning from the edge out to what's extended beyond the edge. But look at the feathering. Now it's kind of adding a little bit of what was around it, which are those leaves. What I can do is I can come under Shift Edge to shift and pull that edge back if I would like. So this is sort of, again, me kind of playing around with the very basic selection and being able to manipulate at this point now to make sure that I'm going to get the selection that I want. Let me go ahead really quickly actually kind of do a doing a very quick selection of a whole flower, at least so we can have the whole flower. So it's not the easiest thing, but there we are. And I'm going to do select and mask. And then here's where I'm going to, again, add a little bit of smoothness, add a little bit of feathering, and get that shift edge pulled back. Okay, so that now if I do Command C, Command V, that's how that would look by itself. I'm going to take off the visibility of everything else, all right? Let's go back and talk about how we could get rid of the green when we get to our next tool. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and come back to my next lasso tool, which is polygonal lasso. So polygonal lasso allows me to be a little bit more precise. And what I'm doing is I'm creating these selections by clicking my way around. So I'm not having to do it in one fell swoop. I'm not having to do it manually, right? And being so perfect and not allowing for that mistake. I can just select the area that I want by slowly, methodically clicking my way around at different points until I get the selection I want. This is for when I need a lot more precision than the original lasso tool. So polygonal lasso allows you to click your way around. You're clicking at strategic points to create your selection. So it's again a free form. The last one is our magnetic lasso. Magnetic lasso, just by me gliding my hand over, I'm actually not clicking on my mouse. I'm literally just using my mouse to sort of try to get as close as I can to the edge of the flower. This is not doing a bad job. Magnetic lasso tries its best to find the edges based on a high contrast edge. So as you see, it's, you know, a couple elements are not quite right. They're not there, but it gets us pretty close. So that's not bad. I think I'm going to actually try to get the whole flower. So magnetic lasso, the amount of contrast can be adjusted as you see in the top if you take your eyes and look at the top bar, but I'm pretty done. All right, and we can adjust the amount of contrast, the width, the frequency of the points, etc. So that's really nice. So if I wanted, that would be my selection there. And I can, again, I can take away or add. So let's say I wanted to take away. Okay, so I was able to take that part away. I can mix and match. What if I say take away with the regular lasso tool? And now you see I can kind of get my first selection with one tool and go back and make my corrections with another tool. Add to selection, add the rest of that leaf back in. Take away from selection, take away the rest of that, those leaves. So there we're starting to get a lot more precision. What if I go ahead at this point now and do a select and mask? Now I see those edges look kind of, it looks really crisp and kind of cut out. I don't like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do feather. And I'll shift the edge in a little bit. I still have a little bit there. Why don't I go ahead and erase it? So in my select and mask window, there's tools that allow me to continue my selection if I didn't get everything. So I can come in and do refine edge. I can also say brush and I can take away. So I can come in here and kind of brush away any parts of those leaves. Using my bracket keys, those are the two keys next to the P on the keyboard. I can make that brush really small and get in there and try pretty much to get rid of the rest of the leaves on the outside. So I think that one is pretty true to what the selection was I was trying to achieve. Oops, get that out there. And then I can again smooth a little bit, maybe less feathering as I like until I'm confident that I have the right selection. Command C, Command V, use our move tool. Look at the difference. All right, so let's go ahead and get rid of that one. Let's go back to our next tool, Quick Select and Magic Wand. So again, lasso for free form, you kind of have to, normally I use a Wacom tablet, so I'm usually just drawing everything more naturalistically. But with a mouse, this one, to be able to get a little bit more complicated selections is not, for me, my preference. But polygonal lasso takes time, but you definitely can get a nice precise edge. Magnetic lasso is what I found worked well with this example, because since we do have a very clear contrasting edge, it was able to very easily magnetically attach to the edge of that flower. And then in the select and mask window, I was able to refine it. So for quick select and magic wand, I'm actually going in the reverse. I'm going to say, let's take a look at the magic wand first so we can start to understand what we're looking at here. So magic wand selects by color, and it asks you, do you want me to choose an average of the color based on where you click your mouse, or do you want it to be the exact color based on where you click your mouse? I'm even going to just do a 3x3 average, because as you see, even though this flower is white, it does have, obviously it has shades, highlights, shadow. The next thing I'm going to need to deal with is the tolerance. Whatever color I click on, first of all, I am getting a little bit of an average, so that's nice. But furthermore, wherever I click, I also want it to tolerate a certain amount of variance from the color that I chose. So again, we're making selections now based on the colors. So how much of a tolerance? Let's start off, the default normally is set to 32. You can see that I was working on something where I needed a little bit more tolerance. And then again, back to anti-alias, we want a softness, a blur to that edge. And then contiguous. Well, let's take a look at contiguous and we'll understand the difference. If I, for example, want to start off not by selecting the flower, but by selecting the background. With all of these settings and contiguous checked, when I click on that area there, it's not picking up exactly everything because I only allowed for 32% variance. So as you can see, there's still these much darker shades, the elements of shade here, these pixels that are not being selected. But even more importantly, I'm also not picking up the whole rest of that background. It's only contiguously selecting color up until the edges. Once there's something interrupting, it won't pick up the color past that. It won't select the color past that. What about the opposite, right? So if I, oh, actually it does. It won't, somehow, there must be some way that it's open, something seeping in there. But if I pick up select with contiguous this area is not chosen. Let me do a couple things and try to improve this. Let me try to increase my tolerance and say tolerate more ranges of that color, and I'm going to deselect contiguous, and I want you to see what this looks like. Do you see now that really pretty much I think about 98% of the background is now chosen? Oh, and also some elements from the, is that called the stamen of the flower? So contiguous allows you to find that color and select it wherever it is in the document, whether it's connected contiguously connected pixels or whether it's also someplace else in the document. So contiguous, where only just up until the edges of a certain area of the document, or contiguous unchecked, find that color wherever it is. Okay, so that's the background. Let's actually do this now in the reverse. Let's select the flower. It's still not selecting these darker elements here because it's still thinking this is way past 50% of the tolerance of what she's asking me for. So in this case, now I'm going to move to the quick selection tool. I'm going to deselect. How am I deselecting? I can either go to select, deselect, or I can use Command D. So I've been using Command or Control D. So I'm going to go ahead and select now my flower, and I think you can see that's pretty amazing. I mean, I don't even know if you realized I'm going to deselect again, Command D. All I did was quickly just kind of grab two or three, I really kind of clicked and dragged in the center of the flower, and this quick select tool is a little bit more intuitive than the magic wand because it understands colors by color families. So it does understand a little bit more about when colors are related to one another as opposed to a literal interpretation. You ask for white and I can only go up to 50, it's 50% tolerance of variance of that white. But quick select allows you to select when you're, in other words, as if you're painting out color groups, color families. Let me come back to our selection here, for example. We were working on this image. I don't know if you noticed, but again, I literally just clicked sort of in one or two areas of these clouds up here, and it understood immediately that I meant the whole sky. And you can see there's blue in there, there's white, there's grays, but it understands that those colors are related. I could go ahead and say add, continue to add to my selection, include the flowers, include the trees here, anywhere that I'm clicking. This is being powered by a brush. So again, I can even change the size of the brush, the hardness, the spacing. So this quick select tool is sort of, again, kind of, it came very many years after the magic wand of doing this manually, but it made quick work of it. So rather than just colors, color groups, related color families. So this is how we can start to work with our selection tools and refining our selections with our select and mask feature. And it's time after this to start looking at photo editing. But for now, play around with the selection tools. And if you have any questions, be sure to ask in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you soon.